Well, we certainly appreciate you tuning in to Curiosity, Not Judgment. My name is Birga.
And I'm Gary.
So many conversations happen before we ever begin filming on any given day, and conversations that we're part of independently, and then conversations that we have as we come back together. And as often happens, we maybe start with something in mind, and just as our day has gone on, the ideas change and we shift directions. And so today is certainly the case in this particular episode, or that is the case in this episode. I sometimes feel a little underprepared, I think, to discuss some of these really big topics, because the truth of the matter is neither one of us are experts. We are not psychologists. We do not come here with any set of directions that we can pass on to you all to follow these steps and your life is magically better, but rather we are processing these things together and hope that in our conversation that you all find some inspiration and some courage to take different steps in your life that may be motivators towards changing the way that you think, and especially as it applies towards how you look at others and coming out of a posture of judgment and into one of curiosity. So let us start today. Can I ask you to kick things off with what is foremost in your brain today?
Sure. Well, I will start by saying, no, we are not psychologists, but I did stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night. And so...
And I don't get that joke.
yeah, that's an old commercial.
Okay.
And sorry, it's probably it's an old commercial. Anyway, so it doesn't make you an expert, but it's an old joke about I'm now totally prepared and rested because I stayed in a good place last night. And so, we sometimes think about what we want to say in these things, but we're not reading from scripts. And I actually enjoy riffing off of things. And Birga is an amazing, I was going to say interviewer, better conversation facilitator. And so
I'll take it. Thank you.
And so I just really appreciate the conversations, and we really don't. We sometimes have ideas, but it's mostly riffing. Lately, we've been talking a lot about, and I've been talking with friends about this whole idea of right brain, left brain, not in the way that we usually think of engineers and artists, more of pre-conscious and conscious. Mm-hmm. And we've been exposed to some material and research recently where the experts are saying that the right brain is not, it is a physical part of the brain, but it's really a flow. In other words, all your sensory inputs come in through the right brain, and then by the time they get to the left brain, you can put words to them. But that right brain filters a lot of things. You can't possibly take everything in because it's just too much information. Right. And it has opinions. This is the part that freaks me out. It has its own way of processing things and judging and thinking and perceiving of those inputs before you even have a chance to be conscious of them.
Right.
What I'm realizing is that because of my life experiences so far, I often, when I'm in comfortable situations, I can be myself, everything's happy, joyous and free, I'm great. When I'm in uncomfortable situations, I act differently. And I've always wondered why that is. And now I'm starting to realize maybe these guys who are talking about this pre-conscious, have something. Maybe it is that these kinds of processes happen before I'm even aware of them. And I'm starting to be actually convinced of that. And I started thinking about what are my patterns of how do I react when I'm in uncomfortable situations. And I like mnemonics. I like to put P's and C's and S's and things so that I can remember things. And the things that I started thinking about is I try to protect, perform, or pounce. And so this is useful for me to be aware, because I think that when we're talking about things of the mind, it's not like you can just fix it. It's like quality time with kids.
Right.
You don't just say, okay, go.
Yeah. It's time.
It's time. It's more of a process. And so the process, and I'm not an expert, to Birga's point, that I think is happening here, and this is not the answer, but it's progress towards it, I think, is it's kind of like an awareness and then a kind of retraining, reformatting, reprogramming, and then ultimately kind of a healing. And I know the healing sounds woo-woo even to me, but I think it has something to do with a process by which you're not going in to protect, perform, and pounce anymore, if you're talking about my brain. So anyway, that's kind of my thinking.
Okay.
And I've been trying to make myself aware of that and trying to think, how do I retrain and reprogram away from that? Because it doesn't serve me.
Right. So for some clarity, your 3 Ps are the issues that you face in an uncomfortable situation. But if you're in a comfortable place, those 3 things don't really rear up.
In my experience, those things don't even occur. In other words, if I'm in a comfortable situation, I was just with my son, who's living overseas right now. We did a Zoom call with dozens of people on it, and it could have been utter chaos. It could have gone bad in so many ways. I didn't care. I knew that my goal as a connector was to get as many people on that screen to say surprise and happy birthday as I could. And I really didn't care what happened after that. And I knew all those people loved and supported me. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter if it went well. It didn't matter I didn't feel like I had to protect, perform. I certainly wasn't going to pounce on anybody. And so when those things didn't work. So for me, I can see a stark difference if I'm in a comfortable situation where I feel loved and supported, and when I'm in a, perceived or not, in a threatening or uncomfortable situation.
So the objective, at least for you, and I think a lot of people will feel that this is something that resonates with them. The objective for you is when you enter into an uncomfortable situation, that those 3 Ps are not the dominant thought process, but rather you have trained yourself and done the exercise work enough that your discomfort doesn't generate those 3 responses.
Wouldn't that be great? And now that you just said it, I think I'm fixed.
Oh, good.
No, I think this is the issue is despite me having just gone through all that, I'm going to do this again tomorrow.
Right.
I may do it this evening. And that's the frustrating part for me is, although it's progress and I really enjoy that part, it's frustrating in that I now know it and I'm still doing it, right? It's almost like it's a double-edged sword. But I think that it's the first step is awareness. I'm pretty sure that's true. I have a pretty good feeling about that. Can I fix it? Will I be able to fix it over time? Will I be able to do anything about it? That's the difference. But as we talk about curiosity versus judgment, I know that my preconscious is doing some judging.
Sure.
And I can't fix that. I had a little mini revelation the other day about this with respect to dreams. You know how you're in the middle of a dream and you're in a situation and you know what's going on, but nobody told you.
Right.
You didn't get the narrative saying, you've just been dropped into the twilight zone. Here's what's going on.
Yeah.
Or nobody told you. You don't have direct empirical evidence. You just know.
Yeah.
You have an awareness. I think it's like that. I have an awareness of something that's going on, but that awareness may be right or wrong, and it may be not causing me to act properly. My brain may be trying to protect me by doing these things from traumas from my youth or whatever, but it's not serving me now. So how do I retrain even before I get to my conscious part? Because if I feel uncomfortable and I start lashing out, it sometimes sends me into a vicious cycle that I find it hard to get out of.
Yeah.
Especially if other people are reacting to me and, we get in our corners and we start duking it out.
Yeah.
So how do I get into a practice where judgment doesn't even occur? I can go straight to curiosity, even in uncomfortable situations.
I know this is not a direct correlation, but this is what comes to my mind when you're describing this. And by the way, your 3 Ps are not foreign to me. Those are responses that I too am aware that I have in an uncomfortable situation. But when you have a physical injury to your body, and in my case, I've had problems with my tailbone in the past, I can do exercises to strengthen my muscular structure. You can do exercises to strengthen your core, which helps offset the tailbone, etc. You can be in the practice of learning how to sit and stand differently, like the way that you enter and exit a chair, the actual movement in and out. You can, do lots of different things that would help support your physical body. But sometimes the pain, that zing of pain, is still there despite your exercises and despite your best efforts at practicing things that you've been told by the medical profession.
It's true.
But the other part of this, which enters in, which I think is a fascinating to me correlation, I went through a process of having back pain for many, many years. And somebody says to me, would you be open to reading a pretty out there book about back pain? I'm like, sure, what do I have to lose? And the premise of this book was, it's all in your head. And I read this book and was fascinated about, could it be that repressed anger, repressed anxiety, and all of these emotions that we don't deal with based on traumas, based on the situations that we find ourselves in, are being stored in the brain and manifesting as pain. And so I'm having all of these things swirl around in my brain right now as you're talking about this. And is it our, I'm going to say pain in air quotes, is it our pain response, the 3 Ps, because of past traumas, because of all these other things? And can we get to a place where we say, it's all in your head, there's not a threat, you don't need to perform, and you absolutely don't need to pounce?
Yeah, and in this case, I know it's all in my head. And so I think that's a really good metaphor, actually. And the other part of that metaphor is you still have a tailbone issue. I'm still going to have this issue, even if I make it better, I improve it. Especially if I improve it with loved ones. You know, one could argue, who cares about strangers? Although in the whole scheme of things, strangers are just as important, and we should care about everybody. I'm still going to react in ways and sometimes go, man, I wish I hadn't done that, right? And so, but that's okay. I still have the self-awareness. And by the way, I can share that with people, right? I mean, I just like I share with people soon after I meet them, if I'm going to have a long-term relationship with them, that I speak provisionally. I talk about things that don't exist yet as if they exist. Right. That's one of my blessings and a curse, right? And so, and if you know that about me, then you don't take me literally when I say, I want to do this, or I wish I was doing this. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it tomorrow. It's mean I'm thinking about it. I might get there. Versus some folks are like, if I say something, it already happened. Right. So it's the same here. There may be part of this where I just have to accept that this is the way I am. On the other hand, I'm a big believer, and in my experience would tell me that I can at least improve it to where I can be a useful member of society and help be and add value in situations rather than detract value. And I think that's true.
Yeah. You know, the concept of it's all in your head is often said as an insult, but it is very, very real.
Very real.
And I think for every person on planet Earth to varying degrees. I had a conversation even earlier today where somebody was communicating to me that had been said in an insult. You know, this problem is all in your head. Even if it is, it's still a real problem. And so how do we begin healthy behaviors, healthy changes in our lives to deal with the all in our head stuff, because it is manifesting, whether it be in physical pain, emotional outburst, you know, professional toxicity, fill in the blank of whatever the outproduct is from it, it still has to be dealt with.
Still absolutely has to be dealt with because it's our reality.
Yeah.
It's our individual reality on our journey.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the key for me is if I think about what do I really want in my life, what are my goals kind of surrounding, and it's around influence, it's about, you know, quality relationships, it's about being able to add value in different situations. And if I really want those things, then it behooves me to at least acknowledge and work on those things, right? And if nothing else, make sure it doesn't get worse.
Right.
Right? I mean, some people would say, okay, you're in a hole. Well, at least stop digging.
Yeah. Right?
So get rid of the shovel. And so try to watch traumas. Now, remember, the researchers that we're studying right now, you and I both have one that I'm thinking of right now, would say that a trauma exists when you have tried to deal with something on your own,
Right.
without the benefit of a loved one.
Right. Haven't
And
been able to process with a loved one.
well, and growing up, we often try to process things on our own through nobody else's fault. It's not like we're not surrounded by supporting, loving family or people. It is just the fact that we are ashamed or embarrassed or for whatever reason we choose not to. I was bullied as a child. I thought that was the worst embarrassment ever. I never talked to anybody about it. And so I lived with that. And there's a trauma now that comes now when someone is speaking to me and I perceive that it's even in a little bit of a bullying manner, or they're trying to be intimidating, or they're trying to just be louder than me, right? I have a reaction.
Sure.
To the point of almost being triggered. How do you improve on that, right? Is this person really a threat to me? Are they really intending to bully me? I can go through that rationally, but in my pre-conscience, am I still gonna have a reaction? Probably.
So I'm liking the idea, just as I'm thinking through it and then now I'm going to say it, about if that phrase gets said to us, it's all in your head, to instead of taking that as an insult and knowing though that it's a judgment from somebody else, but to flip it around and to have it be a curiosity, say, okay, this might all be in my head, so now what?
Exactly.
I don't know that I've got a great next step besides the awareness, and I think that's a big hurdle a lot of people likely don't ever get over, right? Is just the conceding, maybe this is all in my head, but it is in my head, so what do I do with it?
We have to give ourselves a lot of credit, I believe, for thinking this way. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and whichever Plato or Socrates that said the unexamined life is not worth living. I really am starting to understand that more at this late age, in that if I just go through the motions, if I just have the same reactions, if I just live the same life every day and have, lived the same year 20 years, versus, as Jim Collins used to say, versus, making progress in a year, or even getting to the point where I'm living 20 normal years in 1 year, I feel like that brings more peace, calm, and joy, even if it's sometimes painful at times, even if it's not something I necessarily want to do, than if I just live the same day and say, well, I'm Norwegian, I react this way, and this is my upbringing, and so this is who I am, and I can't change it. I think thinking about these things, even if we are not sure we have the answer of what to do about it yet, is still good.
Yeah, I agree. And I think making sure that we are in a position that we're not casting a judgment of a box around somebody, and not putting a box around ourselves, meaning, we don't use the phrases, they'll never change, they'll never whatever, and also not saying that about ourselves. That's just who I am. I can't help it. That's how I'm wired. Because that is placing a box of limitation around the other person or yourself that I think is just an excuse to stay stuck.
Yeah, and this brings to mind the whole hurt people thing. And, I was privy to a conversation where someone said, you don't have any role models. And it finally got down to the point of, well, I'm not worthy, so nobody else is worthy either. And so it was an interesting set of conversations, in that, sometimes I project what's going on inside of my head to other people. And that may or may not be the case.
The hurt people phrase has obviously, borne out in example after example throughout history. But I would love it if, through this medium, through this podcast, as we are encouraging people to examine the way that they're thinking about others and themselves, we really transform that to hurt people, help people. Because there is something remarkable about the resiliency of the human spirit and what people have been able to endure. And when that hurt and trauma is dealt with in and processed with somebody that is safe and that they love, and as they begin to walk through that journey of healing, how that life experience can be used for somebody else's benefit. I know of a few examples that I can think of that will quickly bring me to tears in the beauty of somebody's extreme trauma or damage in life and how they've overcome and been able to pour into somebody else to help them walk through a time of extreme trial or trauma.
I believe that our modern day heroes that we can point to, and there's a great Jack Johnson song that says, "Where'd all the good people go?" And if you haven't heard it, you should listen to it. But exactly along those lines, people who use their pain to then help other people through the pain are modern day heroes. Absolutely true. And that is a great example of turning something that could be a vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle.
Yeah.
And it's a great example of, yes, you've got a tailbone issue, or I've got a protect, perform, pounce issue. Yes, it's there, but if I can somehow get through that and make some progress in my life for it and be useful in situations and add value, maybe I can help other people who are going through a similar struggle.
Absolutely. I think this might be a good place to kind of bring it home. I am always loving when we've got some key themes that we can kind of just meditate on as we leave. And so, certainly I hope that becomes even a catchphrase for all of us, right? Hurt people, help people, that become our MO moving forward. But then also just that notion of it's all in your head, rather than hearing that in a tone of judgment, to hear it in a tone of curiosity. And when you process it through the lens and the tone of curiosity, how that might inspire change in your own thinking and in your own life.
There's no question that it is our mindset that begets our behaviors. And anything that we can do to help change our mindset, as we were talking about last session with paradigms, absolutely, that's a left brain activity that helps and has influence. Doesn't fix, but has a positive influence on our preconscious, and therefore our behaviors even before we know we're behaving that way.
Good stuff. All right, we will close with that and encourage you to, of course, participate in any comments or feedback that you want to give us through the website, curiositynotjudgment.com. You're, of course, welcome to leave comments on whatever platform you are viewing or listening to this on, and we always love to hear what's on your mind. So curiositynotjudgment.com, and until next time, we'll wish you a fantastic week.
Take care.